Hi, I'm Melissa.
And I'm Jesse.
Welcome to the Reimagine Success Podcast. We're a husband and wife team who want to make a difference and change the way we all view success.
We've had the privilege of interviewing so many amazing, talented, and successful guests. Each one of them experienced success in their own way.
We want to change how society views success by inspiring you to live your best life and celebrate your successes no matter what that looks like, big and small.
Success looks so different for everyone, and we want you to reimagine your success. Welcome to Season 2 of
Reimagine Success. Welcome back to Season 2 of Reimagine Success.
Can you believe that we are already halfway through
I
Season
know.
2?
This is crazy.
This is the 13th episode of Season 2. The way we do our seasons, if you can't figure it out based on the numbers, is we do it by half of a year. So as a half a year passes, we start a new season, and we have done every single week for now 3/4 of a year. This is the beginning of the last final quarter of this season.
Yeah. And you know, what's crazy is we have talked to so many guests in all walks of life that's doing big things. And we are just so blessed that you guys are tuning in every single week. Don't forget, you can go to Patreon. You can get ad-free episodes. You can get video episodes and bonus content. So definitely check out patreon.com/creativeglobal.
Yeah, over there, we do a lot of really cool stuff. We give you guys some insight into our lives, some behind the scene footage from the podcast, extra content from the guests. We've got so much. So don't miss out on that. For less than a cup of coffee every month.
Yeah,
you can
all of it.
You can
$5.
get every bit of it. Just $5. Come over, subscribe, get that extra content. You won't regret it.
That's right. And today is nothing but another exceptional guest. So we are going to go ahead and kick it off.
Yeah, today we've got an amazing guest, Emily Sutherland. She is a writer and storyteller with a full spectrum of professional writing experiences. After 20 years as an executive writer in the music industry, she's now a business owner, author, ghostwriter, strategic marketer, and coach to people embarking on their own writing stories. She has lent her writing expertise to countless published works in a wide range of mediums, including television, web content, books, magazines, and documentaries. And she has most recently created a self-paced story writing course to help people who have a great story to write, but need a little bit of guidance and encouragement. You can learn more about the course and see her portfolio at emilysutherland.me. And with that, we'd love to welcome Emily Sutherland to the podcast.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you, guys.
Yeah, we're so excited. So I know we all have a lot in common. Jesse's a musician and you have a background in music. I'm a writer. I have a comic book series, Deadly Crimson, and we're actually working on a motivational book right now, actually.
That's amazing, you guys.
Yeah. So
and
we love the fact that you are on the podcast today.
Yeah. And we've also got a mutual friend that introduced us to you, Brooke Salazar, who was on our podcast back in season 1.
Yeah.
So it's just cool the way the world works.
Brooke.
Yes. Big shout out to Brooke, one of our favorites.
Yes. Good people.
Yes. She's amazing. And so we're so glad that we were able to make that connection with you. And now that you're here on the podcast and we get to kind of pick your brain and learn from you and get to know you some.
Yeah, exactly.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
So we'll get started. What's your story? I know you were a little bit of background in music, and now you have this writing courses. You're doing everything. But where did you come from, and how did you get to where you are today?
Well, my dad was a pastor, and we moved around about every 3 years to different places. That's kind of how our gig worked. And so I lived in a lot of places, but not for very long. And I can remember one place that we lived was a little town. We lived in some very small towns. Okay. Very, very small towns.
I'm from a small town, so I totally get it.
Yeah.
And we normally lived in whatever, housing was there for our family. And so we had a lot of different experiences as a family. But I think what happened was as we moved around a lot and several of the different little towns that we were in, we really kind of mostly had each other, and even though our external circumstances were often transient, I think it bonded us, and our family was a big storytelling / story collecting family, Right. And of course, my dad told stories for a living in some respects. So he always loved jokes. He loved stories, and we collected them along the way. So And we had many of them because we lived in so many places and knew so many kinds of people, right?
Yeah.
And storytelling became sort of I think a coping mechanism, if I'm honest, because, I think the way that we process our life is to talk about what's happened, right? So every dinner time around the table was everybody was telling the story of their day, or if we had people over, which happened a lot for us, entertained and so forth, that we would tell them stories. We would hear their stories, and our life, without really even realizing it, revolved around story, right? And when we all kind of settled in Indiana in the 90s, and we didn't move after that. We moved from house to house. My husband and I ended up getting married here and moving here, and moved house to house, but not from the area, right? So our family was still putting down roots in the same place, and still letting our story sort of be the thing that held us together. My dad went through some difficult times, and ended up leaving that job, and went into the funeral industry. We talk about some stories. There's some good ones there, but
I bet
a lot of stories there.
I won't even rabbit trail about that. But we had kind of a family crisis, when he became depressed, and he was really burnt out. And at that time, I was not sure what I was going to do with my life. And I remember just kind of having this moment of thinking, I really feel like everything that we have been through together as a family, and everything we're going through now, might be helpful to somebody at some point. And I remember starting to write down my experiences even then. And then one of the places we had lived was a teeny little town, medium town in Virginia. And I remember my parents going to a concert when we were back then, that really moved them and changed them. And it was a gospel concert at the time. And they came home with a record, and the record was real cutting edge for the late 70s, and had the lyrics printed on the inside. Right.
Okay.
And they were really inspired and encouraged, because it was, it's not an easy job. My dad did not have an easy job, and it kind of can wear on the whole family. Right.
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
we had this album, and the words on the album were unlike any other words I had heard. There was a lot of nuance. There was a lot of meaning, and it was different than a lot of the things I was hearing and experiencing at the time. And I can remember looking to see who wrote those words on that album. It was written by, and the songwriter that really captured my attention was Gloria Gaither, and she wrote hymns and a lot of really deep songs that a lot of people knew. And that was in the 70s, and they were sort of kind of at the forefront of a new kind of music, where people were talking and singing about different things than I had heard before. And it really met my family where we were at. It was something meaningful. And when we moved to Indiana, I had no idea that the Gaither Music Company was in Indiana. But I ended up having an opportunity to interview with Gaither Music. And it felt so full circle. So I was like, I can't believe that these people that inspired me when I was probably fourth or fifth grade was the first time that I saw those lyrics, and was like, I wonder how I could ever put together words that would mean something to people like these mean to my parents, like these mean to me. And but I ended up working there, and within 2 weeks of working there, they had me writing voiceovers for them and doing things that I never really had the opportunity to do or thought I would do. And that led to a 20-year journey with them. And I ended up having a lot of opportunities to do a lot of kinds of writing. So a lot of things you see on my resume started with this company, and, their CEO met with me. I interviewed horribly, and I usually didn't, but my son was a baby, and my husband was out of the country, and I just felt sort of off that day. But I went and I did my best, and he took a chance on me. And 20 years later, as the Gaithers were retiring and they were scaling back a lot of things, I decided, okay, this would be a good time for me to go freelance. They're still a client. I still write for them, but they don't have to keep me on full time, and I get to try some things I hadn't tried before. So it kind of was a full circle moment when I had the opportunity to work for the people that had inspired us and really encouraged us at a time when, things were rough.
That's really cool. And for people who don't know, the Gaither Vocal Band is massive within the gospel music industry. Like they're some of the forefront writers of a lot of the music that's used in a lot of churches these days. And back in the day when I was involved in that scene, they were, some of the more common people that we would hear songs from.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it's funny that you mentioned as a kid you told stories and that was your outlet. I feel like a lot of kids that are creative at heart and that's your passion, your gift to the world, start at a very young age. And you were blessed with your parents. They were able to kind of guide you in that way of telling stories and getting comfortable with that. And I feel like a lot of kids now need to do more of that. They need to tell more stories and write more stories and create the bones of how to create stories. And speaking of that, what is your writing technique and how do you feel like it translates when you're working for someone else and kind of bringing their writing to life?
That is an interesting question because I can remember just sitting down to write myself. I would often journal or do poetry or things like that. And I can remember just not feeling any sort of direction, or I was just like spilling words and I really wasn't sure why. It felt good, it was cathartic, but I didn't really have any focus. Right. And when I started writing for a company, they were like, the goal of this is this. And we need people to understand this or buy this, or, we want them to feel this, or whatever the experience we were writing. We did a lot of kinds of writing, which was great exercise and great skill building for me. But it always had a goal. And so it really had, it taught me that, you can write for fun and journal and wander all over the place. But at the end of the day, it's really good to sort of, when you're ready to land the plane and say, okay, what is this piece going to be? Whatever it is, where are we going? And then is every word, every sentence, every idea taking us there, and it keeps you from rabbit trailing. And, I can remember a book that my aunt gave me one time when I was young, and it was, I didn't remember the name of the book, but they would get off on these descriptions that were I would be like, okay, I get it. The field is beautiful. Okay. And it would kind of get off of the story, and I just would try to write in the way that I wanted to read. I didn't want to go on some long rabbit trail, even though words might be pretty, but where's this journey taking me? So I really tried to keep the attention with every sentence building on the next. And so that's still kind of what I do when we're writing a book for someone else, or a story, whether it's a book or like a bio for someone, I really try to say, okay, what do we need? What is the bottom line of what we want this person to walk away and say, this was about that? And then how can we get there in a way that's engaging, that's enjoyable, that people can connect with, And so really that kind of became the process. And no matter what it is that we're writing, it's just like, okay, who's reading it? What do we want them to experience? And then how can we get into their head and take them there in a way that they enjoy?
Yeah. I mean, it's all about structure. Writing is a structure and a process, just like everything else in life.
Yeah. And for me, so I'm a musician. I've been a singer-songwriter for, like 22 years now.
Forever.
I love that.
And there was a season in my life where I actually went through a really bad writer's block, and my life was kind of in shambles at the time. I didn't have the energy to even think about writing songs because of the way my life was going. And I remember specifically, I was a middle school teacher at the time. I was teaching chorus and orchestra, and one of my students tragically passed away in a house fire. And when that happened, I was there to try to pick up the pieces with the 50 kids that were in that class. It was our chorus class, and helping them to grieve and mourn. And through that process, I was trying to process my own emotions, and I've always for years and years had a very difficult time processing my own emotions in my head. And I found that writing music was a way for me to really think through the way that I was feeling, and to get that emoting out into the world in a way that I could help myself process. It sounds kind of similar to kind of what you were talking about, how you were using storytelling to kind of deal with the stuff in your life. So can you go into that a little bit more? Is there any specific examples that you could think of that maybe like you can specifically say, oh man, writing really got me through this because I was dealing with this and I was able to flesh it out into words?
Yes. No matter like if I'm writing something that I just need to get out, process, I don't worry about process, who cares what anybody thinks? Somebody may never see it. It's just a matter of what is it that I need to make sense of, and that's really where writing started for me. It wasn't structured at all. It was what is going on. And I'm like you, I don't necessarily emote with tears and anger and things like that. I emote with words more than anything. And so it was really a survival skill for me. And, in the environment in which I grew up, happy emotions were much more acceptable.
Yep.
And difficult emotions were tough. And I can even remember writing a poem. I was really mad at my mom. She had said something hurtful and I wrote a poem, just letting it all out. And she found it like months later.
Oh my
and
gosh.
was devastated.
Oh no.
So that definitely, I realized at that point that my words are powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, if I, and in good ways, and it can be harmful in tough ways, and so I had to really learn not to filter my writing, but to use caution. And if there is something that could be hurtful, to shred it or or put it somewhere where my mom wouldn't find it or somebody else wouldn't. But at the same time, I can't tell you how important it was to me at that time to get it out because my whole point in writing it was not to hurt her. I didn't want to yell at her and scream and say mean things. I just needed to get it out, get that emotion out. And of course, I didn't plan on her finding it, but we talked it through and we survived it. But I do think that it is a really powerful and positive way to really process what you're going through. And then there are times when you can look back on that years later with some clarity, and you can create it into something that the world needs, or that, you can shape it later if you need to. But I think in those moments when you really just need to get something out, don't worry about the process. Don't worry about the end results. Just say what you need to say. And often you might look back and those can be the most powerful things that really touch people, that you're surprised, you think, oh, I thought that was just for me. And it actually, the emotion that you felt when you're writing it, other people feel when they read it, as long as it's not your mom and it doesn't say something that would be hurtful to her.
Right. Like my diary from when I was a kid. Don't read it.
Oh yeah. I've got a million songs about people that have hurt me in relationships, and they all probably know that those songs are about them. And I guess they can choose not to listen to those if they'd like.
Exactly. It's just all part of the process. But I do think for every creative person, that creativity is a gift to us, but it's also a survival skill,
Yeah.
It really does help you make sense of pain and transform it, and I've heard the expression that if we don't transform our pain, we transfer it to other people. And I think writing, for me at least, is a way to transform it and to make sense of it and say, what was I wrong here? What am I missing? And be able to process things that way.
I love that, actually. Speaking to that, we tell our kids all the time, if a bully is picking on them at school, it's because bullies hurt people because they're hurt or they've been hurt. And speaking on writing, that's a really good way that I feel like kids can get their emotions out. And if they're writing something sincerely and from their heart, or, from their hurt or their pain, then that is a form of creativity that they can get that process out and not hurt other kids in the process.
Right.
So I love that. I love that you just said that.
Yeah. I feel like that creativity also is somewhat of a burden for us, because we're gifted with these things and we're able to do this, but it also comes at a cost, because then we have to deal with that pain when writing it. Like some people can just brush it under the rug and ignore it, which isn't healthy. I'm
That's not
I'm not
healthy,
saying
yeah.
to do that at all, but I'm saying like it's for creatives, it's our job to deal with the tough stuff and to say the hard things and to put the truth out there so that people who are also going through these situations could then heal through our pain that we experienced and our healing that we've experienced as well. Like we're able to use our lives as a way to help others, which is awesome.
And they can relate to us. It's a way that people can relate to other people and say, oh, I'm not the only one. I'm not alone. There's a community out there. There's people that can support me and guide me.
Definitely. That happens all the time. And the kinds of books that I have been writing since I launched my own business have really proven that to me at a different level, because I've told some hard stories. I've helped people who didn't have the words to tell their story, to tell these really difficult stories. There were 2 abductions. There was a woman who went through spiritual and many other kinds of abuse by her pastor in a church setting. And, there was a lot of trauma there. And when she put that story out into the world, you cannot believe the emails that she received, the people that would wait for her after she spoke to say, me too. Like that happened to me. Oh my goodness. It's so good to know how you survived. And it's a powerful medium to be able to tell what's happened to us so that others can say, oh, somebody else survived it. Maybe I can too.
Yeah, that's so great.
So I want to ask you one thing about your writing technique. So someone comes to you and she has a story, about her pastor. So now do you have them do recordings of their story and then send it over to you so that way you can process it in a book? Or how do you get their story over to your side so you can write about it?
That is a unique process for every person that I work with. Okay. And what I usually do is we set up a meeting once we're like, okay, we're doing this, and at that meeting is kind of our launch meeting. And that's where we sit down and I say, okay, when somebody closes the last page of this book, when they're done reading it and they explain it to somebody else, what do you want somebody to say? What's that takeaway, and then let's move backwards, where do you want to start? And we start going through and kind of mapping out the pieces and parts of the story that they want to tell. And I'll kind of create an outline. And then we fill in that outline however they need to. So some, the client whose book we're just on the final stages of finishing her manuscript now, we did a Google Doc. And she just started and I said, this does not have to be pretty. This can be just bullet points or things that will help me know what questions to ask. And we would meet about once a month. She would leave me Google Docs. And sometimes I would ask questions in the Google Docs, or I would send her a question like, okay, what do you mean when you say this? Or tell me more about that. And that's how we did that. Auntie Anne, the first person who trusted me to write her book after I left the music industry was Auntie Anne, the founder of Auntie Anne's Pretzels. And she was the one with this really tragic story of loss. She lost a child and she experienced abuse. It was like a trauma cycle that she was in. And then she ended up building this amazing international franchise. And so I was like, okay, this is a wild story. It had lots of facets to it and things like that. And how can we tell this? And we would literally get on calls and I would just type and she would talk and we did not go from any documents or recordings. We just had live conversations where I could just ask. And then she had me interview a lot of other people who were involved in the situation and the counselor that helped her through it and all kinds of things. I did a lot of research around trauma and so forth, and just kind of correlated all of those things or collated all of those pieces and tried to create something that flowed and that, took the reader on the journey that we needed them to go on. And that even included weaving other women's stories in. So it was very complex, but it started with conversations.
That's so cool. I love the way you can collaboratively work with somebody who's got this thing inside of them. It's like, I don't really know how to get this out.
Right.
So I'm going to trust you to put words to my experience. And
Yeah,
that's such a,
love it.
it's such an honor to be able to do that for somebody and to take their story and put legs to it. And so I want to dive a little bit into your writing company, because I know you do a lot of that. So when did you start the writing company, and what are some of the main struggles and challenges that you faced getting it off the ground, and what that looked like for you?
I appreciate you saying that about the sacred space that it is to help somebody write their story. And that's really the thing. That's the thing that keeps me going. And it was that kind of made me want to launch out on my own. And so when Gaither Music Company began to, they began to tour less, and there was a lot of, getting smaller. They were not getting any younger, and we teased them about that. We're going to have dinner. I'm going to have dinner with them in a few nights because we still are dear friends. I feel like they're almost like family to me, and we have a lot of shared stories. And after all the years, but they still tease about their age. And they're like, everybody's under 50 is a kid to me. And they call everybody kids. So, but when things were getting smaller there, it was important to me to lead well. And the opportunity to do that came in March of 2017, where there was going to be some transition, and they were doing some movement of staff and things. And somebody that I had hired that I ended up working for, because I never wanted to stop writing. So if people got promoted over me, I'd just be like, fine, it's fine. I want to write. And so the vice president at the time met with me, and she said, I know that you have a lot of things you want to do in your life, and this might be the time. Maybe we can work out a different job description or a work from home situation so you can start pursuing some of those things. And such a great staff there, because they really are about helping people fulfill their dreams too. And
can I pause and ask you about that real quick? Because
please.
Sometimes when we're offered an opportunity like that, it can almost be taken wrong. Be like, whoa, you don't want me to work for you now? Like, is that what you're saying? Like, am I out of a job? What's going on? How did you respond to that initial conversation?
Well, she and I are very close, and she knew I wasn't writing as much as I had been. I was answering the phones a lot. I was doing things that, weren't necessarily my first calling. And she and I were very close, and she knew that, the level and the number of writing jobs were getting smaller, because we were just not touring at the speed which we had once, and we weren't releasing videos and shows, at the pace that we once had. And those were the things that I was writing. So we both knew, like, I could see the writing on the wall. There was less writing for me to do. And so it was not at all an offensive, like, we don't want you anymore kind of thing. I knew, I mean, I owe everything I've done since to this group of people believing in me and giving me opportunities. So, the fact that she was willing to say, she basically said, if you want to change up how we do this, this would be the time to do it. And, she gave me scenarios. She said, maybe you want to work from home. Maybe you want to go part-time. Like this, I'm telling you that if you want to make a change, this would be the time to do it. And I know that you have talked about that, and so there was not any animosity on my part. There was some fear, because I thought, okay, if I left, like, I've had the security blanket, for 20 years, and but I remember talking to my husband about it. He said, what if you just left and served them freelance and just did your own thing? And I can't even explain, but you know how you just have to listen to yourself sometimes. And there was this sense of relief and freedom in me that I felt in my body.
Yeah.
And I have not always been very good at listening to my body, but I just, the relief that I felt in my body when he said that, I was like, that feels right. And I can't believe I'm even saying this, because I'm always the secure one. I wanted to know what we have to count on and stuff like that. But in my body, I was like, I can't not listen to this. You guys are looking at each other like you understand what exactly
we do.
We are currently in that exact scenario.
We are currently going through exactly what you went through at that time. So it's exciting. It's nerve-wracking. It's
leaving our full-time steady day jobs to go full-time as creatives and really pursue the things that are in our heart. And it's scary, like you said, but it's also invigorating. We feel more alive than ever before.
I feel like my soul is just open and just ready to just tackle the world, you know?
Yeah.
It's
And when
amazing. I love
when
that.
you were saying like you felt it in your body, like this relief, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh wait, we actually can have the freedom to do what we are made to do instead of punching a clock every day and doing these meaningless tasks that get on our nerves anyway, and we don't want to do them. So we're in that same boat with you right now.
You ask about challenges. There are many, as you know, when you're on your own. You know,
Yep.
you have the security of that paycheck and those structures in place, and you kind of, your day is sort of planned. I just show up and people just tell me what to do, you know, and all of a sudden you wake up when you're on your own and you're like, oh, I have to figure out my priorities. I have to create a path for myself here, you know, and so it took a little while to figure out, like, you know, what are the kind of clients that I want, and you know, how much do I charge those clients, you know, how, you know, all those little things that, you know, you don't really think of it until somebody's like, yes, I want to hire you, and then you're like, oh, I've got to figure out like what this means and how to structure it and how do I know what's coming in, and, you know, just try to create some structure around it. You know, that was just a real challenge, one that I invite and loved, but it was a growth, you know, opportunity for sure.
Oh yeah, we've spent the last 2 weeks putting together contracts and
marketing
handbooks
plans
and marketing and like figuring out clientele, and like it's been kind of crazy.
It's a lot on the back end when you start a business. I think a lot of people don't understand what entrepreneurs really go through when it's just you, it's just us, or it's just one or two people. Most of the time, one person getting this off the ground. So can you talk about what happened once you got your first client, and how did you use social media? How did you, was it word of mouth? How did you get your clients?
The best ones have come through word of mouth.
Yeah.
And I wish there was a sophisticated sort of formula that makes clients come, but you make one happy and they tell people. And I've been very fortunate in that way. And even my first client, Auntie Anne, we had met at a concert when I was with the music company. So she knew who I was. I knew who she was. She was very respected in our circles. She was good people, and everyone knew that she was a very bright light in the world. And so I had a feeling I would enjoy working with her, but I really didn't know her well. And, you know, I hoped that she would trust me. I hoped that she would be happy with my process and the way that we did it. And she was, and we ended up doing 2 books for her as a result, which was so great. But I can still remember I was sitting on the beach with my family that summer after, you know, it was my first summer self-employed, and we took a family trip, and I remember sitting on the beach and getting that email like, would you be interested, and is it in your wheelhouse to help Anne write her book? And you know, I emailed them back and assured them yes, it was. And I had written ghostwritten books for people, you know, along the way, helped them put it together behind the scenes when I was, you know, in my former life. So I knew I could do it, but I didn't have my name on a book to show them because I had ghostwritten, you know. And so she really had to take a leap of faith, you know. And I felt very fortunate that they trusted me, and a mutual friend who knew me and knew her, he was the one that said, you know who you need to get to do this, because he knew the kind of writing I had done, and was privy to a little bit more of the work that I had done, and my name wasn't on, you know, and he was able to assure her that, you know, I at least could do it. And then once we started, and I can also remember the moment where I'm sitting on the beach and they said, okay, she would like to proceed. What do you charge? And I'm just like sweating, and I'm like, oh my goodness, if I tell them, is it going to be too much? Is it going to be too little? Like, you know, literally just sat there and I've like erased and added and subtracted and like really sweat over that. And
you're like, what's your budget?
I did try that, you know, because they said we don't want to offend you or whatever. And so I just really had to figure out what I needed to do it. And I just took a leap of faith and thought, you know what, if this is meant to be, it will be what I need, and I will be what she needs.
Mhm.
and there will be a match there. And so I just took the leap and said, this is actually what I need to do it. And I was very fortunate that they said yes. And that was that we were off and running.
That is
So
so
in
exciting.
the interim between when you sent them that quote and then they actually said yes, how many times did you question yourself saying, oh no, did I ask for too much? Are they mad at me? Are they not responding because they're like, oh my gosh, this girl's out of her mind because she just said that it's going to cost X amount of dollars and there's no way we're paying that much?
All of those things, millions of times. Checked my emails like 50 times an hour,
I actually did the same thing with our first client. I sent over the price and then I looked over at Jesse. I was like, she's not as excited. It doesn't sound like she's as excited. Like, I don't know. Was it too much? Was it too, and
Yeah.
he's like, calm down, Melissa, calm down. They're busy.
Whenever she doesn't hear back from somebody immediately on what we've proposed, all of a sudden all the dread and fear just overtakes. And it's like, they hate us. They're not going to do it.
Well, the first client is so difficult because you want to make sure that you're not overcharging,
Mhm.
that you're not undercharging, that you're making sure that you get enough, for what you need.
Right.
So it's so exciting, but at the same time, you're like,
It's trial and error because you don't know, am I pricing this correctly? I'm doing it based off of what I feel that I'm worth.
yeah,
But
Mhm.
do they think that I'm worth that? And that's where it gets scary, because if they say no, then that means that you're not worth what you think you're worth in
Right.
somebody else's eyes.
yeah.
And that's a tough
Right.
pill to swallow. And then you have to reevaluate some things. So did you ever run into that situation where you gave somebody a quote and they're like, ugh, no, we're not going to do that?
Yeah, I have. And the honest truth is that, I've had to do some real work internally to say, giving somebody the gift of their story in a manuscript, it has value,
Mm-hmm.
especially somebody that doesn't feel they have the skills to organize their thoughts and put it into a engaging manuscript. And so I have to realize that whether or not someone else sees that, or whether or not they're ready to make that investment, I just know what a value it is to have that, to be able to speak and to say, I'm an author and I have my book in the back. If you want to get it, that is something they will always have,
Yeah.
So I had to really just kind of settle that. And of course I talked to some of my freelance friends. You know how it is when you set a price and you're like, was I crazy? And they're like, no, that's fair. And of course I did a lot of research, on the range that ghostwriters with experience versus not, what is that range, and where do I fall in that range? And I would love to think that I'm on the very high end of that range, but I also realize that, the people that I'm writing for may or may not have a household name. Auntie Anne happened to, have a recognizable name, and I was very fortunate. I couldn't have planned that for myself in a million years.
Yeah.
That my first client would be somebody that people recognize, because then after that, there was credibility,
Right,
the woman who founded Auntie Anne's Pretzels must not, hire idiots to do, so, somebody read that book and they said, well, I have a really hard story. I'd love to see if you would be interested in helping with that. And I remember one of those early clients, the first couple of years there, she didn't have the budget to do this yet. But I also didn't have other clients. And I had to make a decision at that point. I thought, I don't have a lineup of clients. I would rather have a little work than none at this point. And so there have been projects where I knew that I was to tell their story, and I had that sense, that gut thing that we were talking about, where your body's saying like, you need to do this.
Yeah.
And that project ended up being a project that I got a lot of other clients from, because that person was like, oh my goodness, I could never have done this for myself. I'm telling everyone, so she would go out and speak and she would tell everyone, this person helped me create a book. I could never have done it. And then those people would call and email, and she referred so many people to me that I just, really grateful. And I'm glad I listened to that thing, that thing inside you that says, maybe this person's not ready to, hire you for what you wish you could get, but there's some other reason that you need to do it. And, you just can never predict what's going to happen from each thing. You just have to take it case by case and say, am I giving up something else to do this that I shouldn't give up? Or is the way being cleared for me to take this project because I need to do this project? And that's kind of the way I took it. And I'm really glad I did.
Yeah. Well, we're very similar to that process. It's what each day looks like. Some days somebody can come to you and you just have a lot of workload, and unfortunately you can't take on anything else at that particular time because you want every single client that you bring on to, be your top priority. You want them to have the most exceptional product and deliver the most exceptional product, so it's not always okay. I don't want to do this project. Sometimes it's just, I can't do that project right now for that particular price, because I have so many other things lined up. Or it could be, we are completely open right now. We just finished a project and let's do it and let's make it happen. It's very unique in that way.
Yes.
I feel like with entrepreneurs.
And I think, oh, go ahead. You're good.
I'm sorry. I don't want to talk over you.
No. Go ahead.
I think that listening to yourself and going case by case is the only way to do this journey. I really do. Because it's like, I always picture it like the old Michael Jackson, Billie Jean video where you take that one step and the thing lights up and the other thing doesn't light up until you take the next step and then the light's there. That's how I feel like this whole journey is. It's step by step and you just have to go with your gut. Absolutely.
Yeah. And your gut is so powerful when you're an entrepreneur because you have to listen to it and you also have to work on it. So you have to work on your mind, your soul. You have to make sure that everything is aligned so you can really hear your gut and what your gut is saying, because it's so important every single day.
Yep. So true.
I absolutely love this because when I first started looking at what kind of questions we could ask you, I didn't think we would really go into all this detail about becoming an entrepreneur and starting your own business and all that stuff. Like, I thought it was going to be part of it, but there's so much stuff that you're saying here today that's just so great for our listeners to hear. Anybody who's wanting to start a business and the way to go after it in such a way where you have the boldness and the courage to pursue these things that are just ideas and you don't know if they're going to work or not, but you have to have that courage and just go for it and trust yourself. Yeah. And that's such a valuable thing for people to hear because a lot of people don't trust themselves and they don't listen to themselves and they're
afraid.
Yeah. They let fear drive them and they end up staying in positions like you were in where you weren't doing what you loved anymore and you weren't really making the impact in the world that you could have been making. Had you never stepped out on your own and started this business, you would have just kept on whatever you were doing. And all these stories that people now have in the world would not be out there. And their voices
would be out there.
Yeah. So it's so valuable to have people like you. And that's the whole purpose of our podcast, is to show people like you who take those risks and go for the things that are in their hearts and now have this legacy of stuff that they can leave behind and say, look, I took the chance, I went for it. And now here's this book that tells this beautiful story for this person who needed it out in the world. And all these people are enjoying it. And we just want to commend you for that courage to do that and to chase after the things in your heart, because it is making a real difference in the world. And that's so amazing.
Thank you for saying that. That's so, it almost makes me emotional because you really do not know what you're in for. You just take one step at a time and you just hope it's the right thing. And what you said about trusting yourself is such a big deal because I used to not trust myself. And, in some ways I was taught we can't trust ourselves, and, and we can, and and I did. And it has made all the difference, just knowing that, we have been given gifts and intuition and, bodies that give us, signals when something is or is not right. And listening to that is never going to fail us.
Yeah, it's so true. And you have done so many things. You've worked with other writer or others to tell their story as their writer. But you also write your own books. And I know that you have one of the cutest little books out there, How to Hug a Porcupine. So can you tell us a little bit about that book, what it's about, how did it get started, and who's the porcupine?
Okay. So it's funny to say that, and it kind of touches on something that we talked about a few minutes ago, because it was very much a cathartic story for me, because I had a really bad run-in with somebody who was just really unhappy.
Mhm.
And I can remember her making me feel badly, and I hadn't done anything wrong. And I just remember feeling like I need to process this. And so I just started writing this story about this prickly porcupine that was hurting other people. But in the end, she was the one that was hurting. She was isolated, and she didn't know how to engage with people in a way that wouldn't hurt them. And I thought, no, that it's not fun to be hurt by somebody, but it's worse to be the person who does the hurting, because they're hurting on both ends. They're hurting because they're hurting people, and they have that original thing that makes them hurt people,
Yeah.
kind of like you were talking with the bullies
Yeah.
earlier. And I just remember, just in a very short amount of time, writing this sort of rhyming poem about this porcupine. And initially, the porcupine had the name of the person with whom I had the run-in. I ended up making it an alliteration and changing the name, but I just had to do it, at the first, just to get it out of myself. But I ended up putting it in a file, and 10 years later was when I pulled that back out of the file, after I launched out on my own, and I wasn't super busy right off the bat. I had a few, small projects here and there before the Auntie Anne book began. And so I thought, this would be a really good time for me to pull out some of the ideas that I haven't really had time to pursue. I had sent it to a couple of publishers, many years before I decided to just go for it. And I had gotten some rejections, this isn't unique or whatever. And I was like, well, I think it's unique. I would want it, for my kids, but whatever, So I just kind of tucked away, and I thought I'll figure out what to do with it later. Maybe the right thing will come along. And then it was really cool, because I had a friend or a couple that we were friends with, and they were over one night, and they had never asked me this before, but one of them said, "What are you writing right now?" And of course, that was after I had left my day job. And so I love being asked that question, because I was like, oh, nobody cares. I could talk. It used to be people like hanging over, like, are you done with that yet? And they cared, they ran it to the studio or wherever, when you got done with something. But now when I would finish something, I'd be like, to the empty universe, I did finish something. So it was wonderful that they even asked, and I said, well, I actually had pulled out a little children's story that I, wrote a number of years ago. Would you like to read it? And of course they did. And one of them got teary, and she said, when we have kids, I want this in their library. Promise me. Right. Well, then, by the time I ended up being out on my own, they were pregnant. And a good friend of theirs and myself were planning a baby shower. And I thought, oh my goodness, I want to publish this book and give it to her as a baby gift.
Oh my gosh, that's such a great story.
So that's what I did. And I started looking into, print on demand, because I was like, all I need is one copy of this book for this friend, because I promised her, that I would publish it at some point, and it so happened. And again, I don't know that there are any mistakes or coincidences. It's just all crazy. But
right.
The person with whom Michelle was the woman that I was planning the shower with, her husband posted on Instagram a drawing that he had done. And I was like, I did not know John was a artist. And so I immediately messaged him, and I said, have you ever been interested in doing some illustrations for a story that I've written? Because I was thinking about creating this book for our mutual friend for her shower. Would you please consider drawing the characters? And he's a great little, he does a pen and ink, just gorgeous, little fun drawings, and really talented. And he ended up illustrating It's Hard to
Aw.
Hug a Porcupine for me. And it was a really big moment for him because he had been told by an art teacher that he wasn't very good and that he wasn't really, you know, she just did not encourage him in a way that
Aw.
made him feel like I could illustrate a book, you know?
Yeah.
So it was a really big moment for him to be trusted to illustrate a book. And it was a big moment for me because the story had been sitting for 10, 11 years and we were going to bring together our talents to create this baby gift, you know? So the day that it came time for the shower and I had printed like 2 copies of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a print on demand, you know, so you
Uh-huh.
only had
Yep.
to buy, you know, 2 copies if that's all you want. That's what I did. And I had it wrapped up. And when she opened it, she was like, "You did not," you know, and she starts reading it. And then she passed it around and everybody's reading it and reacting to it. And all of a sudden I feel my face just getting red and hot. And I was like, I did not expect this feeling because, you know, I was like, you know, what do they think? You know, and then when they liked it, of course, it was special. It was like this beautiful moment. But then I was like, oh no, I don't want the shower to become about me. And you know, you just start going down the rabbit hole. And I was just like, oh no, yeah. But it was definitely something that I was glad I did. And she, you know, was special to her. And she's got 2 kids now. And not very long ago, they sent a picture of them reading the book to their boys. So it's just something that, you know, I needed to finish something at that point. And I didn't have other things lined up and I did. And it just seemed like the perfect time. And I'll never regret that. And you know, it's on Amazon. If people want to get it, you know, it's always there. It's something that I'm glad I did. You know, it didn't become a bestseller or anything, but I'm glad I didn't, you know, get discouraged by the publishers that didn't think it was that great of an idea, because for my friends and family, it's been a really sweet idea and they've loved it.
So do you self-publish all your work now, or do you go with a publisher?
At this point, I have self-published a great deal of it. And some of the authors, when we've done co-writing, you know, some of my authors have done some hybrid publishing. I have one now that is being offered an opportunity by a publisher. Others have chosen self-publishing. So it just kind of depends on the author and what their goals are, really.
Mhm.
And, you know, everyone has different ideas of what success looks like, you know, for their books. And I just feel like, you know, if you're out speaking and you know you can recoup the cost of doing a hybrid publisher and you want their marketing platforms and things like that, then that can be a, you know, an option for somebody that, you know, really knows they'll recoup the money. Sometimes print on demand is kind of a safe way to just print what you need and what you can do. You don't have to have a whole garage full of books that, you know, you don't know what to do with or anything like that. You know, really things have changed a lot and you really can self-publish very quality, great stuff, you know, for not so much as it used to be. And, you know, there's a place for, you know, having a major publisher that really has a huge platform and that fits for other people. So, you know, I don't ever tell anybody there's one right way to do it, but so far for me, self-publishing has fit with my goals. You know, all I want to do is have a great gift for my friend. And if it sold a few more, then it would, you know.
Yeah, that's
I'm happy with that.
I love that story so much. You know, Deadly Crimson, my comic book series, started off as I was an actress. I was in LA and I needed a demo reel, something action for my demo reel. And I created this character and it was 3 minutes, like just a little scene. And I was going to act it out. And I loved the character so much that I built it up into like a little short story. And I kept writing and kept writing. All of a sudden, it's this full length story. And now I've turned that into 6 issues, comic book issues. And I've self-published. The first issue is already out, and I've actually sold 500 copies already.
That's amazing.
It's really exciting. Yeah. The second issue is is coming out soon, and then we're currently streamlining it into the rest of the series. So it's real exciting what you can do when you have an idea and you self-publish, because you can take whatever it is that you're trying to do and you can streamline it into however avenue. You don't have to do the traditional things. Like I dress up as my character, go to comic cons and go to conventions, and I go to geek trivia, and I just think outside of the box. And I feel like that when you have your own project, you don't have to do the traditional route anymore.
Yeah.
You can do so many things that is just not traditional, and you can do it all yourself.
And nobody can tell you
Absolutely.
not to.
Yeah. And
That's so true.
you can get whatever you want out there. If it's your work and you want it to be seen, you can. So I
Yeah.
love self-publishing. So I love that you did that.
I do. And there are a lot of good platforms that help you if someone isn't great at cover design. I always recommend an editor, an outside editor
Mhm.
that knows publishing. I always
Yes.
recommend to my, coaching clients and things, please get somebody to edit it that knows the book industry, so they can just make sure that, it checks some boxes on professionalism,
Yes.
But man, you're right. There's just no right way or wrong way to do it now. And I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So speaking of your clients and that sort of thing and how you teach people what to do
Mhm.
with their stuff, you're also doing these courses for storytelling workshops. So what can people expect in those, and how long have you been doing it? And just tell us about that.
I just realized that my earrings fell out. So I'm just
Oh, no.
can I acknowledge that and just realize that it fell out, and I'm taking the other one out. Okay.
You could be the one earring woman. We're
Yeah.
okay with that.
Yeah, I'm gonna be that one guest where they're like, did she know? Did she just do
Our-
that? Was that a choice that she made?
Our audio listeners would have never known, but our video listeners, they would have picked up on it immediately. So if you're only
Immediately.
listening on audio, this is what you're missing out on.
Yeah, you're missing. Join Patreon today.
Yes.
Thanks, Emily.
Oh man, sorry, I didn't mean to rabbit trail.
No, you're good.
Kind of my thing.
So you're aspiring writers. You have all of these techniques. So
In your courses.
yeah, these courses and techniques. So how can they sign up? Tell us a
Well,
little about it.
it's kind of cool. In 2020, I did the first one, and it was just a reaction to a lot of people wanted to get together and talk to me about how to do it. And I thought, let me just get them in the same room. Then I can do it once,
Mhm.
and then invite anybody else that just hasn't asked me yet, and let's just kind of create a classroom, So I started it that way, and I held it in my living room. And I packed out that living room. I was so excited. And
That's
I did
awesome.
it through Ticket Tailor, is a website that you can use to sell live event tickets. And when I would get a notification from Ticket Tailor, the first notification, I was like, oh, if you build it, they will come, and they're coming. Oh my goodness. And then, probably 10 or 11 people ended up, sitting in my living room that day to learn how to write their stories. And I created a workbook, and I just kind of took them through the process that I have come to, that's helped me. And a big part of that process at the beginning is to get out of your head and get into, get the critic off of your shoulder, so to speak, get into that space where you're not listening to the inner critic,
Yes.
Mhm.
And I went around and we did an exercise around that, and there were tears. People were, and I'm grabbing the Kleenexes like, oh, okay, this is hitting a mark here, And it was just a beautiful time. And then we went into the process and the nuts and bolts and everything. But it was really interesting just to see people confront the fears and the critical inner critic things that tell them that they shouldn't do this, or what would so and so say, or all of those voices that we have to silence in order to really be creative and let a story be free to be told. And so I felt like that kind of created a unique element to that course, and the reaction was really great. And then I planned another one, but then COVID lockdowns happened, and I couldn't go through with it, and I just had to kind of shelf that idea. So it wasn't until earlier this year, I think March, I kind of pulled that idea back out, and I thought, well, I couldn't do it then, but I think we're safe to meet in public now, so we'll try again. And filled another room. I didn't try my living room this time, so I could accommodate more like, I think 16 people that time, gathered into a room at a great little cafe in Fishers here where I live. And they have this great little upper room and this big table, it was just a beautiful day together, and people were so honest, and I don't know, it was just a really unique thing. It's just magic in the room, people really being honest about where they were, and the fears that they had about telling their stories. And we really got that stuff out of the way, and really were able to help them begin to create a path for their story and really decide what do I want to say through my story. So it's been really cool. And some people one of those clients is actually, she sent me a manuscript the other day, and she had finished her story, or is in the process of finishing it.
Congratulations. Shout out to her.
Yes, her name is Becca.
Good job, Becca.
It's amazing to me. People just need somebody to say, you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a way to do it, but use your own, voice and guide, and, inner gumption, and tell it your way, but you can do this, and I tell them, I don't have any big secrets that I'm holding out on or anything. I tell them the manuscript software that I use, which is Scrivener, and I give them all the resources that I use, because I can't write everyone's story, but I can sure teach other people to write their own. And and so far it's just been a really beautiful thing. But at the same time, it's like, so many people emailed me when I would announce a new class. I did 2 more classes this year, and people kept emailing me that lived far away. Are you doing it online? Can you create this, an online version of this? And so I did one live via Zoom. And but still, it's like people's schedules didn't all line up, and everything. So I thought, I'm just going to create one that people can do self-paced anytime they want. And so I just put that live the 17th of June, so less than a month ago.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Well,
and it was,
you have to fill a need. That's filling a need.
That's it. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I've set out to do. It's just the next right thing. It's just I stepped on that Billie Jean lighted. Anybody that's not seen that video, just Google it or YouTube it, because you're not going to know what I'm talking about. But when you take that next step and it happens, you're just like, man, what if I hadn't done that? What if I hadn't taken that first step and invited those people into my home and known that this process was helpful? And it just like each step leads to the next. And doing an online course felt overwhelming to me at first. And I just made it as simple for myself as I could. I was like, this does not have to be expensive. This does not have to be, technically, magic or anything like that.
Yep.
I just need to look in people's eyeballs and tell them this process. And so that's really what I did. And I literally put it on a Google Drive and started selling it in June. And it's been really cool, the response to that now. So you just keep taking that next step.
Yeah.
That's awesome too, because now you've created this passive income for yourself where you did the work once, and now it can go as wherever it can go. And you just sit back and you reap the rewards of what you've done, because you had the courage to initially say, I'm going to do this project and I'm going to do it right. And then you figured out a way to make it more available to everybody else. It's just so awesome. I love it.
Thank you. Well, and it was even scary. I mean, the day that I put it live, I was scared, because I was like, what if it's not good enough? What if somebody looks at it and they're like, this is dumb, or this not edited well enough, or, whatever. And
I get a bad review.
Exactly. And then I'm like, I have to take my own advice, which is in this very course, not to listen to the inner critics and not to do all the worst case scenario, and just say, this is valuable information about how to write your story. And if you don't have the ability to travel to Fishers, Indiana, these short windows of time that I do this, then this is a way that you can learn from my experiences. And so I just had to do that trusting myself thing that I teach other people to do again.
I love that. Now, it seems like, especially with the tissues, and you do a lot of leading from your heart and guiding from your heart. And you're really trying to do this to make a difference so people can tell their stories. And like we were saying earlier, they can relate to that. They will know they're not alone in storytelling. And so I know that you have co-founded Love Better. Can you tell us a little bit about the organization and its goals?
Yeah. Lovebetter.world was a URL that my husband and I started the same year that I went out on my own. And that just was, again, it was just grown out of a need that we were having couples approach us and say, you guys seem to have good relationship. and we're struggling in our relationship. Would you mentor us, or would you help us figure this out? And at first we helped 2 couples, and both of them got divorced. And I was like, I think we're the worst people at this that there has ever been. But what we realized, this was before we launched Love Better. This was years ago, when people just kind of were coming to us just one at a time. And what we realized is that we really, by the time people ask for help, sometimes they have done so much damage and lost so much trust with one another that it's very difficult for them to figure out the way forward at that point,
Right.
and they've lost a lot of trust, and we can't, undo years and years of habitual, whether it's abuse or just, just communication that's painful. And so we really kind of, shied away a little bit from taking on, counseling sort of roles, because we really didn't feel qualified to do that at all. And so we decided, okay, why don't we we were approached by a couple that was getting ready to get married, and we're like, okay, why don't we say yes to this, because they haven't done all this damage. They're at the beginning of their marriage, maybe
Setting the foundation.
Yes,
For the
maybe we can
foundation
help.
sturdy.
Exactly. Yes. And that ended up being a good approach. But still, after they got married, they would always come to us like 2 months later, and they'd be like, we need to talk. We have some more questions. So yeah, so premarital turned into sort of, okay, but we ran into this snag or that snag, And so at first, when we started Love Better, we just thought, that let's have conversations around how to communicate in a way that is considerate of other people. And it doesn't have to be in a marriage relationship or a lifelong partnership. It can just be how we deal with human beings in the market, or, how we, and as we've kind of continued the journey since we started Love Better, we've really it's really become more of a, how can somebody become conscious in and of themselves and learn to love ourselves and care and operate from that core, and then find other people who are ready to do the same, and it's not about fixing something that's contentious or whatever, but it's like about becoming a person who is loving, and how can we get the things out of the way that doesn't invite kindness and extend kindness to other people. And so we're in a bit of a transition, to be honest, with Love Better, because we really, where it started was, let's just kind of help people think about how they operate in the world.
Yeah.
And honestly, we found that if you don't have a negative messaging, it's hard to get something off the ground, honestly, and it's just kind of white noise, and so there wasn't this big, dramatic like response to it or anything. I mean, there were definitely some great folks that came along with us on that journey, but we're starting to realize that, what we started thinking, this broad, spectrum of let's just make the world better by loving one another better, that really wasn't where we wanted to end up. We've kind of over time continued to hone our message, and we're still in the process of honing that message. And we're starting to think about being conscious people who become conscious couples, finding people who are ready to engage in a way that, invites kindness and love and kind of a shedding of the ego, so to speak, So
we love that, because Jesse and we practice mindfulness, and we are on a self-discovery journey, and we're doing it together. And I think that is the wisest thing that you can do in a relationship, with your spouse or with your friends even, is to be completely open with your heart and open and honest. And not only that, but lead from your consciousness, from your soul. And then from there, everything else kind of comes into place. And Jesse and I, it's so funny because, just last night, we are constantly meditating, growing ourselves, and the supermoon was last night. I don't know if you heard about it.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Yeah,
I made moon water. I'm not going to lie. I made moon water.
Nice. That's so awesome.
I love it. We wanted to stay awake on our side of the world. It's like, it was going to be like 5 a.m. or something, 4 a.m. before we could see the actual moon. So we didn't get to see it. But every moment that we can, and we can kind of let go some of that human ego and the materialistic part of where we think we should be. And we let that go little by little. And I feel like we do that together. So we're always on the same page. And that's some of the best advice. Like you said, is just being together, doing it consciously and leading from your heart. So we love that. And anything that we can do to help you guys on the journey, we will definitely be there, and we'll be whatever you need.
That's amazing. Yeah. We did start a podcast, and we recently went back and listened, and we were just like, I think we're in a completely different space now, honestly, from even where we started with it. So that one is still kind of a evolving story. Maybe we'll talk about that in a year from now.
Yeah.
We'll bring you back on.
And it's so great because your messaging of loving yourself before you can love anybody else is so powerful. A lot of times, and you probably know this being a preacher's kid, a lot of times in the church world, we're just told how bad we are, and how we are worthless without God,
sinning,
and like we're just these evil, disgusting creatures, and we end up hating ourselves because of how terrible we are. And then we carry that into our relationships, and we don't know how to love somebody else because the whole time we've just been beating ourselves up. So we then beat up our partner and to think about how bad they are instead of looking at the good and the love and everything that they have to share and offer. And so, and an organization like yours, where you're teaching people, hey, it starts in you. If you can't love yourself, you're going to be worthless to everybody else. And teaching people how to really, really get down to the root of who they are and love themselves. That's the most crucial thing. With Melissa and I, we not only encourage each other to just be our most selves, but our authentic selves, but we also encourage each other to grow and in the best ways possible, whatever that looks like. And we're doing it together. A lot of people, they grow separately and then their paths split and they don't take that journey together, but we're determined and committed to growing together and building our lives together in a way that is constantly growing us closer instead of making us split.
Podcast.
I love that. I love that. It's so good and so true. And we always tell couples when they first meet, you're marrying a lot of people. You're marrying this person that you know now, and you're marrying the person that they're going to become someday. And so, are you ready to go on that journey? And, I'm not the same person that my husband married, hopefully I'm a better person. And I know he is. And so, giving each other space to grow and just to become your best selves. It's an exercise in trust, because you have to adjust to each other's growth, but that it's in such a good way. And you're almost forced to keep growing if the other's growing, because you have to constantly come to a different understanding of what your relationship is. And if you're secure in yourself and you love who you are and who you're becoming, and you have hope in that, then you're not threatened by the other person's growth. You're excited by it, and I think that's just a beautiful synergy that we can have once we get into that space.
That's exactly right. Love it.
You are so like-minded to us. Thanks again, Brooke.
No, Brooke, we love you right now.
Right? Like,
that's
she's the best at connecting like-minded people, but
I love it.
So this is our favorite part of the podcast. We want you to celebrate a recent success that you've had, big or small, doesn't matter. Could be personal, could be business, anything that you just want to celebrate. Because a lot of times we rush through life and we don't stop and take the time to actually celebrate the good things that are happening in our lives. So we want you to take a minute and celebrate with our listeners and with us something great that's been happening in your life lately.
Well, I would say this podcast is sort of the culmination of 5 years of bravery you know,
Mhm.
and then hearing you acknowledge that the courage that it takes to do that, that's going to be my celebration. Like, thank you for that. You know, I just feel so filled up because it is a very independent journey, you know, as you know,
Mm-hmm.
and there's nobody there saying this is what you need to do, you know,
Yes.
or there are a million of them and you don't know which one to believe sometimes, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
there you have to just really, you know, let that guide, that inner guide, free, you know, to explore. And it takes so much courage to do that, especially like you said earlier, when you're told, you know, at some points in your life that we cannot, you know, you can't trust yourself, you
Mhm.
Yeah.
know, we're, you know, worms or whatever. And really, you know, we are created with so many gifts and so much going on,
Mm-hmm.
and learning to tap into it. It's not like anything I've ever experienced, and it's certainly worth celebrating. So I would say just that sense of freedom to just be me and do what I want to do is that's what I'm celebrating.
I
That's
love
so
it.
awesome.
I love it. And you know, I love that everyone's journey is unique, and that's what we celebrate on this podcast. That success is not money, it's not cars, it's not your house, it's not what you have, it's not materialistic. It's success is how you do life,
Mm-hmm.
how your journey is. Can you lay your head down at the end of the night and you're fulfilled? Are you satisfied? Are you giving back? Are you supporting the community? Are you building a community? And that's everything that we are here at Reimagine Success. We want to build a community, and anything that you ever need, anything that our listeners ever need, or anything our guests, we always try to fulfill everyone's needs. So if there's a connection that you need or a connection that they need, we always bring it back to you.
I love that. So, so great. Thank you.
Well, speaking of which, where can our listeners actually find you and connect with you and get some of these resources
And
that
your
you've got to
book,
give
of
out?
course,
Yeah.
which I know you said Amazon, but
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, it is on Amazon. It's hard to find, but also my website, emilysutherland.me. I have the course live there, and if somebody needs a consultation, let's say they've gotten stuck on their book or they're trying to figure out how to start, and the course leaves them with any unanswered questions or anything like that, you can also reserve time with me at emilysutherland.me. And of course, I'm going to be adding all the books that I have written and links to Amazon so that people can find them when they come. They're on my portfolio there, where you just like look through the portfolio
Mm-hmm.
tab and click the picture of each book and you'll find it. But it just kind of gives an overview of some of the things that I have been working on, and I've got some new things to add soon. So it's very fun.
that's exciting. And I love that you're building your brand and you're continuing to build your business. And what is one piece of advice that you would like to give aspiring writers? That's your final thought.
That's a great question. I really believe don't leave anything that you need to say unsaid. You
Mm.
know, there are so many times where we think, oh, I could never say that.
Mhm.
That's exactly what you need to say. And
Mm.
I just think, you know, I was a timid writer. I was afraid I was gonna make myself look bad, or, you know, and I'm really realizing that when we leave it all on the page and just say everything that we need to say with our lives, something happens. There's this otherness that happens when you tell the truth about your life and your experiences and what you're thinking. Other people resound with the truth, you know, and I think that is the best advice I can give. Just be true to yourself and say what you need to say, and you'll be amazed at how people find their way to it.
I
Oh,
love that. And
so good.
it's so brilliant because it's really true. A lot of people hold back because they're afraid and they're scared, and you know, they don't want to be judged. Well, you know what? It's not about being judged anymore. It's about telling your story. And if someone judges you, that just means they do not need to be reading your story. They're not your clientele.
Mhm.
So I love that your advice is to leave it all out there, because
Yeah.
that is the biggest challenge that most people have.
It's true. And the truth is that if somebody is going to be offended by your book, they're probably not going to find the way to it anyway.
Yes,
You know,
Right.
exactly.
you think that you're writing a book for the whole world, and the whole world didn't read your book. The people who want to read your book are going to read the book.
Exactly.
Yeah, we say all the time that we don't need the world to enjoy our art. We just need our tribe
Yep.
to
Mhm.
get a hold of it, because not everybody's gonna be a fan of what you do. So forget
That's
those other
right.
people. They're not
But
part of your group.
Right. But the right people will find their way to it.
Yes.
And that's who you're looking for.
Exactly. We love it. Well, you have been amazing, Emily. We have learned so much and you've just inspired us. I know that you're going to inspire our listeners with everything that you have talked about today, and just keep doing and being your beautiful, amazing self. And I know that you will take everything that you're doing to the next level and the next level. And seriously, if there's anything that we can ever do, please reach out to us. We publish our own stuff. We are working on an app right now. We're working on a magazine. It's really exciting over here in our world as well. Like as we branch out and we do it on our own as well, we're going to reach out to you and be like, hey, advice on this stuff.
Do it. Listen, I feel like this is the beginning of a friendship. So
Absolutely.
same goes here as well. Anything I can help you with, you call.
Thank you.
That sounds great. Well, thank you so much for your time. We
And we're
look forward.
bringing you back
Yes,
on.
we will have you back on and
Please.
and follow up with where everything's at. So this has been amazing. Thank you. You are brilliant, and we love you.
Thank you. I love you guys.
All right.
Love you. Till next time.
See you soon. When you meet somebody that you just are on the same page with and connect with, and like everything that they're saying feeds your soul, that's when you know it's good.
Oh, yeah. Emily she's taken something, from her childhood and turned it into now a career, and not just a career, but her life.
Mhm.
When you look at careers and you look at what you do every single day, you have to be passionate about it, and you have to love it, and you have to love what you do. And, she loves what she does, whether it's writing her own stories or teaching how to write stories, or ghostwriting, co-writing. I just love that she's doing everything that she wants to do in life.
Yeah. And it's beautiful to watch that. And after we hit stop on the recording, we had a great other part of the conversation with her. So if you want to hear that, head over to our Patreon page, patreon.com/creative global, to hear the remainder of this interview that isn't on this feed. So make sure you're checking that out so you don't miss all the goodies that come along with the extra bonus content.
Yeah. And definitely, if you love this podcast, please let your friends, your family, your teacher, your mail person, let everyone know about Reimagine Success. It's word of mouth, guys, is the biggest tool that we have. And just let your friends know about Reimagine Success.
Yeah. And with that, this has been a Creative Global podcasting production.
Did you get motivated? Do you feel inspired?
Don't worry about keeping up with the Joneses anymore, and don't forget to celebrate your successes every single day. Thank you for taking this journey with us.
Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Reimagine Success Pod. Email us at reimaginesuccesspod@gmail.com and let us know what your successes are. Head over to patreon.com/creative global for bonus and behind the scenes content.
New episodes every Thursday at reimaginesuccesspod.com or your favorite podcast streaming platform.
So let's change our mindsets and reimagine success.